So when you generally feel, I mean, like what exactly is fintech? You can probably think various different applications as of now. They even perceive that they are into fintech operation. Just hypothetically think, if you are trying to trade in Colombo Stock Exchange, that's one form of fintech, right? Probably if you are trying to apply for a loan, that's again another different form of fintech. Let's say all of us get together and we happen to go on a trip, and in a context where you would want to share and split your bills among all your different friends, there comes a different fintech perspective to it, right? So today something that we would be touching is not anything on the lines of theory, or nothing in the lines of chat gpt, or rather you can also think in the lines of something that probably you and me would have browsed the internet and got to know, but something that I would probably be shedding some light in terms of some real world implementations, because I saw certain topics that were somewhat quite imperative for you all in terms of your curriculum, like data analytics, mobile application development, and cloud computing. I'll just probably, as much as possible, try to resonate how we go about doing fintech with respect to those topics, right? So now a lot of you all here might be using pick me applications, isn't it? So whenever you have a taxi hailing need, or probably you're looking at getting your dinner down or lunch down, you might be onboarding your credit or debit card onto pick me. Why? You wouldn't want to give cash to the driver. You are possibly looking at using your credit or debit card as a source of fund in your pick me app. So aren't you using technology there? So you're using technology called the pick me app, and at the same time you're trying to complement that pick me app with your credit or debit card and trying to make a payment to the merchant. It can be to the driver or to the merchant. So those are real world applications of what fintech is, right? So let me give you some form of context. Can I share my screen? Do I have the privilege? Let me see.
Yes, sure. You can share your screen, sir.
Yeah, okay. So I hope the screen is visible to you guys.
Yes, it is, sir.
All right. So I know for a fact not all of you all might be in a position, in a convincing state of mind to raise questions. But by all means, if you have any deliberations, or if you feel that you need some deep dive understanding, just feel free to post your questions either in the chat, or down the line after the session is over, we'll take a separate Q&A. So now these applications that I'm going to show you is what we do, right? If you have used Union Bank's UBGO digital banking application, it's completely designed, conceptualized, engineered, developed using our homegrown talent pool by Epic, right? So what are the challenges that you would see here? What Union Bank's target segment of customers? What is their understanding of technology? Whether they have a relatively good share of smartphone usage, whether they have a good fair background of education, their technical savviness, everything matters in terms of adoption of any fintech technology, right? Now I understand the fact that a lot of y'all, especially when you are engaged in your academics, probably a lot of y'all might have a debit or credit card issued by any local bank out there. At the same time, whenever you would want to maintain your finances, you might have downloaded different applications, right? Just see whether the application that you might have is covered here, right? And after this, I'm going to take you through a whole different buzzword, right, of what the real practical implication of fintech is. I'll just ask you one question. Now, when you have a debit or credit card issued by, let's say, Bank of Ceylon, or let's say Sampath Bank, would you be in a position to use that card out of Sri Lanka? Meaning today you've been using that card. Can you use that card somewhere overseas? Yes, you can. That's exactly what fintech is, right? Fintech as a whole, in some context, it's innovation, where you can do a lot of gimmicks, you can innovate a lot, you can exploit technology, you can harness on technology to play a big vital part. It is, of course, it's magic there. But there are certain fintech technologies, right, which is not magic, which is not innovation. Now today, all of us probably in a position to converse in English simply because we know the way how it works, the language bit of it, and the vocabulary bit of it. So all of that, we are quite conversant of those, right? So that's essentially the reason why we are in a position to communicate with each other. But can two banks in two different territories, in completely two different zones, can they communicate with each other? So that's what standardization bit of fintech is. Just like innovation, you have standardization. I mean, like, you can't add anything creative, or you can't add a pinch of innovation there. If two banks are to talk to each other, there has to be a standardized flavor of how things work. So today I'm going to take you all through the innovation bit of it as well as the standardization bit of it. A lot of you all today might have, not lot, I guess everybody, all of you all might have had at least stepped into an ATM once to withdraw cash. Whenever you happen to go to an ATM, have you all ever witnessed, okay, this ATM comes with these promotions, a lot of different banners, right? By the time you withdraw 5,000 bucks from this ATM, tomorrow the same ATM, if you go and enter 5,000, first time you would have got 5,000 notes. The second time you might have got 1,000 and 500s. So how these ATMs work, how these denominations are being segmented. Sometimes you might quickly be rushing to an ATM and then you realize, okay, the ATM says out of order, machine is not working. So how is this being controlled? So that's what we call as financial technology, fintech, right? Today, right from my fingertips, right from my workstation, I'm in a position to control an ATM. So I'm going to take you all through, I'm going to show you all how ATMs work, how applications like mobile banking, online banking applications work, how your credit or debit card is being issued by banks, how today whenever you go and use your card at Alibaba, AliExpress, Paytm, any application outside the country, how do they get to know your mobile email and how do they validate you using OTPs? So this is a fascination, right? Somebody who gets into fintech will realize that they are basically embarking on a role where it's the future. Just think about it, guys. Now, you use a lot of applications. End of the day, the final thing that you would want to do is to make the payment, right? So wherever you go, payments are an integral part. So that fintech, financial technology, the technology bit of how you do finance is what that lets you make that payment, right? So before I'm going to take you all through each of those specifics, just go through this process, right? People who are quite enthusiastic about mobile application development, front end development, UI UX engineering, this is what is important for you all. See how this is being structured, right? So National Development Bank is using a technology powered by us called NEOS, which we call as neo banking, right? Whatever that you might have seen back in the day is not what you see on screen now. We are doing a complete revamp of it, right? So why they have been in the market? They have rolled this application at least a good 5 years back, and now they understand what the market demands, what their customers' concerns are. So now they would want to revamp. So what you saw here is different to what you see here. Why? If I am a user of NDB and if I'm a user of Union Bank, what do I generally think? Either Union Bank has copied NDB or NDB has copied Union Bank if it is somewhat on the looks, if it is the same. Complexities, backend, all the know-how will be immaterial if you don't really understand who your customers are. So Building solutions or other user experiences to reflect on who your real customers are is very, very, very important. Okay. So now if you take a look at Citizens Development Business and Finance, it's a finance firm. So how they go about doing things are quite different. Now, if you see somebody like a sort of a youngster or rather an individual who is an entrepreneur, he or she might be looking at avenues to trade, to invest, to probably interact with the stock market exchanges. So these are fintech, right? So whether you're trying to trade for treasury bills or treasury bonds or to get some unit trust or equities, people who might be coming from finance or commerce background will understand these terminologies. But for people who are not relatively quite conversant on that, understand just like your current account, savings accounts, your loans, housing loans, personal loans, business loans, vehicle leasing facilities, gold loans, pawning, investment banking is quite different. They got unit trust, equities, debentures, corporate debt, government securities. So they are a bit different, right? So how you tap into them is quite relatively different. Every client would expect something different. So for people out there, especially who are specializing in UI UX engineering, front end development, mobile application development, this is the space for you all to think of. I will, in the interest of time, I'm not going to go in detail, but if you guys have anything, how we all structure UI UX, how we all do the personas mapping, how we all do the front end designing aspects, if you guys are really curious, by all means, just interrupt me and go ahead asking those questions, right? So if you focus on something in the lines of insurance, Selinco Life has the biggest share in terms of life insurance space. So they know where their target segment of customers are, how you buy life insurance policies, how are you going to plan for your retirement, how do you get your investment needs fulfilled. So their understanding of fintech is quite relatively different, right? One of the biggest flagship implementations that we have done is for Bank of Ceylon, Smart Pay, right? Not B app. I know a lot of the people might have a lot of criticisms for B app, but Smart Pay is quite relatively different in terms of the UI UX, in terms of the target segment of who we generally go about dealing, right? So their perspective, Bank of Ceylon, they have a considerable, reach across the villages and underserved, underbanked population. So they don't want the UI to be quite fancy. Should be quite intuitive. How you structure all the UIs, how you make it as much as possible, very simplified is what their zone is. Now, everything that you see on screen, especially if you are into the designing bit of it, you will realize everything is different to one another. Why? These are what you call as B2C. A business like a bank is rolling this out for customers, for average customers like you and me, a business to a customer engagement. So as customers, when you and me happen to use this, I shouldn't be feeling, okay, there are a lot of similarities between these two applications. If that's the case, the real reputation of that institution is also under stake, right? Everything that you see on screen is developed by us, right? Whether you would want to open digital FDs, whether you would want to open savings accounts real time. So after this quick walkthrough on this, I'm going to take you all through some real AI applications, right? For your curiosity. If you guys have any questions, like I kept reiterating, feel free to just jump in, just unmute yourself and ask those questions. Now, if you take a look at FreeMe, back in the day, a lot of you all might have engagement with FreeMe as well. So FreeMe's perspective of what set of customers that they would want to go about targeting is different. Nations Trust Bank, right? Various other solutions in the lines of managing sales folks, how they manage their leads, new customer onboarding, likewise. So today, thanks to fintech, you can open accounts without even stepping into a bank branch, right? So I'm going to show you that as well. And before I go further, guys, just to understand, how long are we planning? Is it till 8:30? So depending on that, I'm gonna tailor myself accordingly based on the subsequent agenda on the session. How long are we planning? Anybody?
We are planning 1 hour session, sir, but if you want, we can exceed the time.
Right, okay, right. So just think about opening accounts. You might hand over your NIC, your passports, your driving license, your billing proofs. So this is where AI comes in handy, right? I'm going to show you how things work in real essence. So for people especially enthusiastic about mobile application development, UI UX engineering, just think about this. All these interfaces are quite different to one another. So what is the message underlying this? Client expectations are different, dynamics are different. People who are looking on the business analysis perspective should be in a position to understand, okay, who is this target segment? What is the customer's corporate philosophy? What does the customer really take pride in? How do you generally position this digital offering to the customer? Who are your competitors out there? How do you differentiate? So people who are thinking of embarking on business analysis role should be more quite conversant on the client dynamics, because this is what the input would be for the front end team, for the front end designers, the development team, as well as people who are involved in UI UX engineering. So now let me show you some aspects of how the UI UX structures go. Do you guys happen to see the folder structure? Whenever you go about doing digitization, right, one thing that you would have to realize is the number of clicks, the number of scrolls, what exactly that you depict on screen. For a customer to love in WhatsApp, for you to send a message or a broadcast message, the number of clicks is what we generally consider to be the user experience, right? So for every transaction, for every feature, for every offering, we sketch this, right? I hope you guys can see the journeys, right? You know how the each and every click would take you through. Guys, anybody?
Yeah, we can
Yeah.
see.
So for every functionality, this is how you generally go about ascertaining the user journey. Okay, first you display the start screen. So whenever you go about doing a mobile application, there is, you can get something done easily, but there is the right way of doing things. You don't get into the mobile application development at one go. There is a process, there is a practice, there is a methodical approach in terms of how you do that. Right? So this is the methodical approach. You first and foremost derive how things work, right? So for people, for folks who are involved in business analysis, they will have to do this. And then the UX engineers will be able to understand, okay, how do I put this in a meaningful way, right? How does the real aesthetics come into play? So there's two different ways to look at it, right? One is the fact of, for every element that you do, you go into something called wireframing, right? You don't go into the real depiction of how things work, how the real look and feel, the aesthetics are being factored. You, all what you are concerned is how does the look and feel of user experience resemble. That's it. Once you get a good consensus of that, there where you go into the real bit of Figma or InVision or any application of your choice to really structure the UI. First, it's important to understand the UX. When you're good about understanding the UX, then you go into the UI bit of it, right? So as far as any mobile application development goes, this is generally the approach that we generally go about following. Now, for every client, when they want to launch any mobile application, let's just take the fintech aside, right? Because I believe more than fintech, it's good enough for you all to understand general practice as such, right? When you're trying to impart the essence of what you have done in terms of the user experience, it's important for you to also go and communicate the essence to the client. So you show the client, okay, this is what we are planning for you guys in different forms and flavors, right? So probably, okay, this is one way of illustration. Okay, this is a different bit of how things work in terms of banking. Okay, this is what we feel would ideally fit your clients. Sometimes you are supposed to show multiple different theming flavors, right? Can you guys see a screen which shows your Neos Smart Bank?
Yes.
Right. So here you give the client, the end client, the impression, okay, this is one way of how we theme. So this is very important, especially if you are trying to embark on a role pertinent to UI UX or mobile application development. Because every client might want to see multiple things for them to come to a conclusion. Okay, this is what I am eyeing for. So you show every element of how things work. Okay, this is how split bill looks like. This is a different theme where you can go for a card illustration, or probably we have a different way of depicting all the icons. Likewise, there is a fair share of homework behind rolling out a digital initiative, not just fintech. Just let's take fintech off, right? So the theming or design ideation is a very, very important process that you generally do, right? So imagine if it is for a client, let's say just what you all saw, a different client might have a different perspective, but a lot of you all even might have dealt with BOC People's Bank, right? So when we went alongside with People's Bank, for us to persuade them, for us to impart what we are trying to do, we had to do a lot of design theming, right, to give them the essence of what we are trying to do. So whenever mobile applications or front-end applications are concerned, you show the flavor of how things work, technicalities, all the technology bit of it, the real back-end stuffs are somewhat hidden, right? Because they are launching a B2C. So what they would want, how they would want to see, everything is different. Now, whenever you see all these, okay, this is how the clients are going to take a look at. But there's a lot of different things that you might have to do in terms of homework. What are those elements? That is what we call as the UX philosophy, right? When you're trying to build something for the first time, it's important for you all to realize, domain aside, but how am I going to design the UI UX? That's where you sketch all the user personas, right? And then following which, after you sketch all these user personas, you will be able to understand, okay, this particular individual is quite prone to these applications, and why are they using this application? What's their need? So this is what, as business analysis individuals who will be stepping into that, will have to think about. And they will have to do a fair share of competitive analysis to understand where we stand, where each and every other applications are offering, what can we be different, likewise. So whether it is local or on an international backyard, it's quite relatively the same. And then comes the wireframing process, and then comes the design systems in terms of your visual elements. What are your primary colors? What are your secondary colors? How does the success messages, error messages look like? So this is what I'm trying to emphasize. A lot of you all might be doing freelancing activities or might probably be looking at freelancing. So there is a methodical way of doing things, or rather you can launch something and say, okay, this is my portfolio, I have done this mobile app. But there is a process of how you do in a way where somebody can easily get along in this project, and they can also, just like you, they can also be part of this project if you have a methodical way. Or else it's just you who has done it, only you know how things work. That's not how things are meant to be, right? So then in terms of visual designing bit of it, what is your accessibilities, what are the fonts that you use, and what is the basis of why you selected this font? And in terms of the pixel sizes, in terms of how the fonts look like, and the entire iconography in terms of how you use, and all your design assets, right from how the radio buttons look like, your foam elements, the fields. So launching an app, there is a huge major chunk of elements of this nature. Before you launch something of this nature, There's a hell lot of process that we generally do, right? So now, things aside, what is fintech? Generally, you might expect me to talk about fintech. What is fintech in the first place? But I went a bit differently. Now, imagine back in the day, all what you were expecting from banks is, I have two accounts, two current accounts, one savings account, and one loan account in your bank. As long as you get a depiction of what your balances are, you are happy. And then over time, you realized, okay, now I managed to see all my account balances. Is there a way I can see my passbook as well? Meaning like all the debits and credits in the application. Okay, the banks did really give you that functionality. Okay, I've been using my cards, I've been doing transactions. Is there a way that all the transactions can also be depicted on the app? Yes. So over time, you have gotten yourself a lot of cards from banks. So now you've got an expectation. Can I control the card? Meaning, can I just switch on, switch off the card without rather calling the call center? If I lost my card, is there a way that I can just report the card as stolen or lost through the app itself? So like these, people's perception changes. How many of you all use fintech applications or banking applications or any finance applications on a day-to-day basis, just like the way how you would use free your PickMe or Facebook or WhatsApp? So for the most part, probably once a week or once a month or whenever you would want to do a transaction is where you open the app. But if you are to get that stickiness, if you are to use that app frequently, that's why now banks do have brought various different gamut of functionalities now for y'all. What does that mean? They give you the option of setting goals. Okay, I'm going to get married in another 1 year time. I'm intending to save at least 1 million bucks. So how can you set up goals, and how can you pull funds from your account, and how can you build yourself a savings goal driven application? Today you might have had numerous expense trackers. So that's one bit of another fintech. Guys, keep in mind, when you say fintech, those are not bank powered apps itself. Anything to do with finance is fintech. If you would want to gauge your net worth, if you would want to understand your investments. So now let me show you quickly what is this. Now, a lot of the applications that we do in terms of backend, these are microservices driven, which is like, Spring Boot driven. So back in the day, people used to develop monolithic based applications in terms of the backend, where if you use Java, you might have be using Java EE, where you have various different frameworks in Java like Struts, Spring, likewise Spring MVC frameworks. So Java has standalone editions, mobile editions, and enterprise editions. Likewise, if you use .NET, .NET Core. So microservices is one design pattern where different technology could be harnessed to build those microservices. So the front end, whether you are using an Angular or React Native or Kotlin, Java, Android, Objective-C, it's different. What fintech is, right? I'm going to show you certain things. If you have something in place, if you have at your fingertips an illustration of your entire portfolio of what you have with the bank, whether it is accounts, cards, investments, your loans, leases, what you see on screen might be an effort of a mobile application developer. But the front end designing aspects is the contribution of a UI UX engineer. The requirement of what to build came from probably a business analyst. And then before the BA gotten into the picture, there might have been a sales engineer or a pre-sales engineer or an account manager or a business development executive who might have gotten this deal in the first place, right? So developing this mobile app, there will be design assets and all these visual aesthetics from UI UX. Then you build it. Now the front end designing is done. Front end development is done. Now how are you going to call the relevant backend services? So then you need to have the backend infrastructure in place. So what is this backend I'm referring to? It can be using RESTful technology. It can be through SOAP, XML, or it can be through even the very obsolete versions of Java, Hibernate, Spring, Struts, anything, or the latest Spring Boot. So all these front end will have to talk to some sort of a backend to get it validated, authenticated, authorized, and then that backend has to talk to a gamut of systems in that respective institution. So when you look at a bank, there is hell lot of systems. Okay, I guess this is being recorded, so y'all can leisurely see this. Right from your core banking system is what we generally consider all your core details in any bank is concerned. That is where it will reside all those details. The credit card systems, credit card host, debit card systems to debit card host. ATMs are being controlled through ATM switches. Likewise, there's a fusion of different systems in banks, loan systems to leasing systems to pawning systems to treasury. So mind y'all, nobody can master technology in relation to fintech, right? It's a huge space, massive space, right? So some might say, okay, I'm working in fintech, where they might think, okay, all what I am doing is I'm into something called buy now pay later, like Coco Min Pay. That's my fintech abbreviation. Another individual might say, look, I am working in stock markets, right? I have engagement with Johannesburg Stock Exchange, Colombo Stock Exchange, London Stock Exchange. So that's a different way of fintech. Another individual might say, okay, I am into the e-com space, e-commerce, where I let people buy and sell using a marketplace. So that's a different way of looking at fintech. So what we do is hardcore fintech, which is to do with banks and financial services. We call this as BFS, banking financial services, which is deadly, which is very informative, which has a better market value. Why? Every bank more or less happens to do things the same way. So you learn something that is of reusable knowledge, right? So now from 360 portfolios, think about beyond fintech, people might be looking at whether you can integrate with any third party open source news widgets to weather widgets like Yahoo, Bloomberg, Reuters, right? And then whenever you would want to get yourself a fintech need fulfilled, let's say you need a checkbook. So when you say fintech, it doesn't necessarily need to be movement of cash, reflecting debit, and in a different context, reflecting credit doesn't necessarily need to be a fintech. It can be for a finance need as well. You need to get a statement, you need to get a checkbook. So there's crazy lot of things. 1 hour or 1.5 hours would definitely not suffice, right? Whenever you do transactions, how can you manage your expenses? How you track those expenses? How you manage those income ratios? When you would want to open FDs, fixed deposits, can you do it completely digitally through technology? If you have obtained gold loans, can you see all those gold loan details? Okay, whether it's a chain or a ring or a bracelet. When you would want to send funds to your colleague or your peers or probably your mom, can you use social media like Facebook, WhatsApp, where through that technology can you send funds? And the person who is getting hold of that particular request, you can't expect them to have an account with the bank. So can they redeem using social media, right? Whenever you go to an ATM, without entering your card, without inserting your card, can you get cash from the ATM? So right from how you see the entire portfolio representation of what you have with a bank or a finance institution or anything, that is one bit of fintech. If you would want to probably understand for yourself, okay, I'm not somebody who expects all the functions in the front screen or home screen. I need a very simplistic way. Can you customize your own quick access menu the way how you feel fitting? Can you personalize it? Meaning, can you change the background colors? Can you change the look and feel? So whether you are into fintech or whether you are into insure tech or whether you are into marketing tech or whatever the hell tech, when you are building applications, especially for the future, something that you are quite should be quite abreast of is how to build that accessibility. How can I make sure that multiple people will have a good liking towards my digital experience, right? Some might not really like the blue color. Whether can I change it? So when you guys are building applications, keep in mind beyond the domain complexities, beyond the technology bit of it, think on the personas, think on the users. Can I add value to those people? I'll just ask you one question. A lot of us might be using WhatsApp. Can I just like in Skype, you can just sign out, right? Without rather uninstalling, without taking your data off, without switching off your data. Can I just pause WhatsApp for a moment? Let's say, හදිස්සියකට exam එකක් ආවා, හදිස්සියකට බොක්කෙන් බහැලා ඉගෙන ගන්න යනවා. That's where I realize, okay, I keep getting messages through WhatsApp. Can I just pause that for a moment? ඒ වගේ අපි ගොඩාක් වෙලාවට we might have to think on the basis of any technology will do a lot of wonders, but it's important to understand the real use case, the real need for you to do something. So these are good enough for you to feel, okay, there might be a bunch of people, elderly population, පොඩ්ඩක් එකලොන්ට යම්තාක් දුරකට පොඩ ලොකුවට තියෙනකොට බලන්න lazy. So these are also something that's quite important for you all to realize, whether can I build experiences that will let people define their own liking. අපි හදලා app එකක් දාලා අපි මොන හරි දෙයක් මාරු කරන්න ඕන වෙලාවකට අපිට කොච්චර දුරට සම්භාවිතාවක් තියේද Play Store එකට අප්ඩේට් කරන්න නැතුව යවන්න මිනිස්සුන්ගේ අතේ බෑ. ගොඩාක් වෙලාවට we might have to expect people to again update those applications. So future is what you call as a very configurable, very parameterized, very dynamic world. Meaning, can you do things, can you do wonders without changing any back-end structure, without changing any front-end structure? That's what your thinking has to be if you guys are focused towards the business bit of it. The technology guys will be building the technology bit of it in terms of the experiences. Now, Hitanda, there might be certain bunch of people who would want to trade, who would want to manage their wealth. So that's one bit of fintech. How you manage equities, how you manage debentures, how can you trade in the stock market, how can you buy stocks for y'all. That's one bit of fintech, right? So I don't have the luxury of time to take you all through the entire process, but I'm just shedding some very high level insights in terms of what is this overall space, right? So let's hypothetically think, okay, there is an application. If you guys are building an application where you can give a quick loan, that's what we call as digital lending. Through AI, you can screen people's credit worthiness, whether they pay on time, whether they will have a tendency to pay on time, likewise. So a lot of these things, hitandako, mage yaluwan tundana ekathu vela, I'm doing a business. We are doing a business together. So whenever that fellow does a transaction, I'm supposed to authorize this. So once I authorize this, the CEO is expected to authorize. So there is a approval level, there is a matrix in place, there is certain authorization controls. So that's one bit of fintech, right? Today, whether it is Japura or any university out there, all your faculty members, your lecturers, your demonstrators, all of these people are being paid salaries, right? So how are these salaries being reflected? So companies or corporates are being given digital experiences from banks. So these payroll files that you generate from your HRIS or human resource management systems, where that will calculate all their deductions, their basic salaries, EPF, ETF, will then go to a bank. The bank will credit the respective individual's beneficiary account. So those are fintech technologies, right? So before Japura sends the entire payroll file, let's say in that payroll file, you had details of salary details of 100 odd lecturers. So there will be just one debit, right? One debit from Sri Jayewardenepura's account, and credit will be, all these lecturers will be having accounts in various different banks. Let's say Sampath Bank has 20 credits, NTB another 15, BOC another 5. So just think about it. එකක් හෝ දෙකක් transaction fail වුණොත් අනිත් පැත්තෙන් debit කරපු එකත් අඩු කරගන්න ඕනේ. So it's a process which requires lot of fine tuning, lot of attention to detail. සත්ත පහකට මිනිස්සුන් බලන technology තමයි fintech කියලා කියන්නේ. හැම සතම වැදගත්. හරිද? So now technology එකක් හදනකොට there will be an architecture for it. There will be different tools and frameworks that you would want to bring in. microservices trace කරන විදිහ. So you guys will have to do your homework in terms of just don't learn the front end back end bit of it. There's a lot of utility tools that you guys can make use of. I will not be highlighting on this unless there is somebody who asks me questions on this. හරිද? දැන් මේකේ dockers කියලා කියන්නේ මොකද? docker එක containerize කරන්නේ කොහොමද? ඊට පස්සේ just think for yourself. Anything is possible. Don't ever think okay this is what we have been learning in the university. Anything is possible. තමුන්ටම උපකල්පනය කරන්න පුළුවන් වෙන්න ඕනේ. අඩේ මේවා දුවන්නේ servers වල. server එක trace කරන්න පුළුවන්ද අපිට? මේ application හින්දා කොච්චර දුරට memory පාවිච්චි වෙනවද කියලා බලා ගන්න පුළුවන් වේද? hard disk එකේ ප්‍රතිශතය කොහොමද? ඒ වගේ දේවල් හිතනකොට then you get the curiosity, then you google and understand okay what are the tools that you can use for this. කාලයක් තිබ්බා හැම දෙයක්ම තමුන් පුරුදු වෙලා තිබ්බේ කෝ application එකක් මේවට තමුන්ම හදනවා. දැන් එහෙම ඕනේ නැහැ. There is a crazy bit of applications out there. As long as you are quite vigilant about it, as long as you have the curiosity to understand those, you can simply download that, learn things of that nature. හරිද? දැන් හිතන්න මිනිස්සුන් ගිහිල්ලා කාගිල් ස්කිල්ස් වල කාඩ් එක දෙනවා. මොබයිල් එක ටැප් කරනවා. These are all fintech. pawning companies තියෙනවා. pawning ගත්ත ගමන් කොච්චර අපි හිතමුකෝ pawning වල ටිකට්ස් තියෙනවා. gold ඔයා උකස් තියන්න පුළුවන්. ඒක කොහොමද ඩිජිටයිස් කරන්නේ? හැම දෙයක්ම fintech කියලා කියනකොට උපකල්පනයේ තියෙන්නේ අපි day to day කරනවා. මේක මට පොඩ අමුතුවෙන් කරන්න බැරිද කියලා කියනකොට that's where the fintech flavor kicks in. Right? මම pawning already උකස් තිබ්බා. එක ටිකට් එකට මම දැන් මාසෙන් මාසේ තමුන් pay කරන්න එපා ඕකට අදාළ වාරිකාව. So how do I let that happen? ඒ වගේ there is lot of things for you all to think of. People who are into analytics, Power BI Tableau master කරා කියලා තමුන්ට ජීවිතයක් ඉස්සරහට ලොකුවට තියේ කියලා හිතන්න එපා. හරිද? Think how do I bring that analytics power, the BI business intelligence bit of it, how do I build applications based on that analytics power? හරිද? So මේකේ දැන් උදාහරණයක් හිතුවොත් just something equivalent to Power BI Tableau you can virtually තමුන් හිතන්න ඕන දෙයක් පුළුවන් කියලා. Oracle, the MySQL, the MS SQL දත්ත කියලා තමුන්ට DDL එක අදින්න පුළුවන් ඔයාගේ ඕන application එකට. DDL එක කියලා කියන්නේ data structure එක අදින්න පුළුවන්. ඊට පස්සේ ඔයාටම දාත හැකි relationships ටික inner joins ටික දාලා ඔයාටම report ටික හදන්න පුළුවන්. කාලයක් තිබ්බ මේව ඔක්කොම මිනිස්සුන් ගහනවා. දැන් ඕගොල්ලන් ChatGPT ලෝකේ හැම දෙයක්ම කතා කරන්න හිටන් probably the script is completely ChatGPT driven. So in this competitive world the thinking process has to be quite very different. අපි use කරනවා cashbacks, promos මේ ඔක්කොම fintech perspective තියෙනවා. හරිද? So since I don't have too much of time මම ඔයගලන්ට පොඩ්ඩක් පෙන්නන්නම්. මිනිස්සුන්ගේ වාතාවරණය අනුව සමහර වෙලාවට අපි fintech use cases නිපදවනවා. හරිද? අපි හිතුවා ඒ කාලේ හරි මිනිස්සුන් හැම වෙලාවම බජට් එකක් තියාගෙන ඉන්නවා. හැම වෙලාවම අන්තිම මාසේ දවසේ ඉවර වෙනකොට තමයි you realize that you have already lost all your money. So අපිට බැරිද conceptualize කරන්න pot එකක්, savings pot එකක් ගන්න මිනිහාට certification එකක් කරගන්න ඕනේ. ඊළඟ මාස පහ ඇතුලේ යාට save කරගන්න ඕන ඕමනාවක් තියෙනවා ලක්ෂ 2.5ක්. එයා හැම මාසෙම සල්ලි අදිනවා එයාගේ account එකට වෙන බැංකුවෙන් මාසෙන් මාසෙ ඇදලා goal set up කරන්න. හරිද? මට iPhone එකක් ගන්න ඕනේ. ඒක මම කොහොමද මම දැම්ම target amount එක දාලා need එක set up කරන්නේ. මම හැම වෙලාවම transactions කරනවා දැනගන්න ඕනේ කොහෙද මේ transactions ටික යන්නේ කියලා. හරිද? transactions කරනවා හැම වෙලාවම but මට පොඩි හැඟීමක් තියෙනවා save කරන්න නැහැනේ මම කියලා. So let's say you go on a taxi raiding application. Transaction amount came to $615. ඔයාලට define කරන්න පුළුවන් round up model එක. මගේ හැම tran එකම closest 50 එකට round off කරන්න කියලා. So 615 කියලා කිව්වට ඔයාට අඩු වෙන්නේ 650. 615ක් නෙමෙයි 650ක්. එයි අනිත් 35 ඔයාගේ කැටයට යන්නේ. So ඒ වගේ fintech කියලා කියනකොට ගොඩාක් මිනිස්සුන්ගේ සාමාන්‍යයෙන් හැඟීමක් තියෙනවා කොහේ හරි debit වෙනවා කොහේ හරි credit වෙනවා. මොනකට දෙවෙන්නේ මොකටද වෙන්නේ මොනවාද ඔයා දෙන සේවාව ඒකෙන් තමුන්ට සෑහෙන දුරට තමුන්ටම දේවල් හදාගත හැකි අනේ අපි ඇප් එකක් හදමුකෝ අපි යාළුවෝ ඔක්කොම එළියට යනවා අපිට හැම වෙලාවම ප්‍රශ්නයක් වෙලා තියෙන කවුද යකෝ මේක පේ කරන්නේ මේ බිල සෝ ඒ වගේ අවස්ථාවක අපිට බැරිද මිනිස්සුන්ගේ මොබයිල් එක ගැහුවා හැම එක්කෙනාටම පුෂ් එකක් හම්බ වුණා පුෂ් එකකින් බිල් එක ස්ප්ලිට් කරලා තමුන්ගේ කාඩ් එකෙන් අඩු කරගන්න හරිද සෝ මේ හැම ඇප්ලිකේෂන් එකම ඔයගලන්ගේ ලෙවල් එකට දේවල් කරුවට you might be probably piggyback on a bank or a back end system ඒ back end systems fintech එක තමයි අපි හදන්නේ හරිද සෝ මේවා තේරෙන්න පොඩ්ඩක් පෙන්නන්නේ මොබයිල් ඇප්ලිකේෂන් ස්පේස් එකේ කියලා කිව්වොත් ටැබ්ලට් ඇප්ලිකේෂන් ද මොබයිල්ද හැම වෙලාවෙම මිනිස්සුන් තමුන්ව ජජ් කරන්නේ කොච්චර දුරට ප්ලීසින්ග්ද කොච්චර දුරට ලේසිද කොච්චර දුරට තමුන්ට ඒක very intuitive ද කියලා හරිද guys can you guys hear me in the first place මොන හරි interruptions තියනවද are we good I'm going to show you all certain things on ATMs on things of how we all ඔයගොල්ලන් ගොඩාක් වෙලාවට ATM එකෙන් ගිහිල්ලා සල්ලි ගන්නවා ඇති but ඔයගොල්ලන් දන්නේ නැහැ ATM වැඩ කරන විදිහවත් හරිද ඒ වගේ දේ මම ටක් ගාලා උඩින් කියාගෙන යන්නම් my voice is audible everything is perfect there we're not hearing anybody so far.
Yes sir we can hear you
hari so all the front end experiences if you all see I mean like sometimes now we live in a era where people talk about agents AI agents but still අපි තාම අපි පුරුදු වෙලා තියෙන මිනිහෙක්ගේ මුහුණ බලන්න නැතුව අපිට පොඩ්ඩක් අමාරුයිනේ so අපිට වීඩියෝ කෝලින් තාක්ෂණය කොහොමද ගේන්න පුළුවන් fintech වල හරිද so සාමාන්‍යයෙන් fintech එකට ඔබට ගිහිල්ලා අපි හිතන්නේ මොනවා වුණොත් debit හෝ credit card හෝ account එකක් ඒ app එකේ තිබ්බනම් තමුන්ට select කරලා ඕන දේවල් කරන්න පුළුවන් අපි පුරුදු වෙලා තියෙන්නේ ඕක පාවිච්චි කරන්න දේවල් නිකන් අර සීමිත දේවල් වලට but හිතන්නකෝ ඔයගලන්ට අමුතු මානසිකත්වයක් තියෙනවා මම බිල්ඩ් කරනවා කම්පැනි එකක් ඒකම concierge services Kingsbury cinnamon ගලදාරි වගේ මිනිස්සුන්ගේ items ටික exhibit කරලා මිනිස්සුන්ට gift කරන්න දෙනවා so gift කරාට අන්තිමට කොහොමද payment එක කරන්නේ so මේ ඕන application එකේ ඕන platform එකේ ගුණාංගයක් අනිවාර්යෙන් the integral bit of it is going to be how well you are going to bring the element of payments harida that payments bit is not something simplistic harida gift කරන්නද buy කරන්නද ඒ වගේ ගොඩාක් දේවල් තියෙනවා හරි දැන් මම ඔයගලන්ට පෙන්නන්න යනවා certain things about beyond payments හරිද හිතලා ඇතිනේ ගොඩක් කට්ටිය e-channel link doc990 doctor channel link වලට පාවිච්චි කරනවා දැන් ගොඩක් banking apps වලටත් මේක දානවා එයි හැම එක්කෙනාම බලන්නේ transactions ටික වැඩි කරගන්නේ කොහොමද හරිද so හිතන්නකෝ දැන් banking fintech apps වල ගොඩාක් complement වෙනවා diet plans දෙන්නේ කොහොමද wearables like your Huawei or your Fitbits integrate කරලා ඔයාගේ calories burn කරන තරමටම සල්ලි දෙනවා ඔයාට so those are certain practices that you would probably be experiencing in very developed economies අතරම තියෙනවා හරිද New Zealand වල ඔක්කොම දෙනවා the more calories that you burn the more points that you get the points are equivalent to nexus වගේ keels වල you get a point scheme which is equivalent to monetary value හරිද now people who are interested now මෙච්චර වෙලාවක් මම පෙන්නුවේ mobile application front end ඒ වගේ දේවල් ඒ ඔයගොල්ලෝ ගොඩාක් කට්ටිය පාවිච්චි කරනවා ඇතිනේ B app හරි Genie හරි Finpal හරි Easy Cash හරි සම්පත් විශ්ව හරි NSB Pay හරි People's Wave හරි ගොඩාක් පාවිච්චි කරනවා ඔයගොල්ලෝ දන්නවද මේ මිනිස්සුන්ගේ ප්‍රධානතම බිස්නස් එක තියෙන්නේ ඔයාලට ට්‍රාන්සැක්ෂන් එකට අමතරව ඔයාගෙන හරියට හරියම දැනගන්න එක ඔයා කවුද කියලා. ඒවට ඇනලිටික්ස් ඕනේ. සාමාන්‍යයෙන් බැංකුව වල at a glimpse බලනවා at a glance එකකින් පේනවා වැඩිපුර ට්‍රාන්සැක්ෂන්ස් කරන්නේ මොන ජෙන්ඩර් එකෙන්ද. transactions වැඩිපුර complete වුණාද fail වුණාද මේ quarter wise කොහොමද transaction types මේවා නිකම් Power BI tableau එකෙන් ගැහුවා පළියට අපි BI engineers හෝ data analyst වෙන්නේ නැහැ. There is lot of analysis that you guys have to bring in. උදාහරණයක් මම කියන්නම්. මේ ගොඩාක් කට්ටිය අපි දන්නවනේ අපිට බලන්න ඕනකමක් තියෙනවා මොන transaction එක වැඩිපුර perform කරේ. හරිද? transactions ගොඩාක් හැම වෙලාවම කෙලවෙන්නේ fail වෙන්නේ මොකටද? මොන මාසෙන්ද transaction වැඩි ඒ වගේ දේවල් බලනවා. but අපි හැම වෙලාවෙම හිතන්න ඕනේ මේ app එක හෝ online එක හැම වෙලාවෙම click එකයි scroll එකයි පදනම් වෙච්ච දෙයක් නේ. අපිට බලන්න පුළුවන් නම් මට බැංකුව වලින් ඉන්න මිනිස්සුන්ට බලන්න පුළුවන් නම් මොන pages මොන screens ද customers ලා වැඩිපුර බලන්නේ. ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ feedback එක කොහොමද? එයා පාවිච්චි කරන්නේ වැඩිපුර dark mode ද light mode ද? හරිද? වැඩිපුර එයාගේ preferences මොනවාද? English ද සිංහලද තමිල්ද? මේවායි තමයි හරියට තේරුම් ගන්න පුළුවන් මම මගේ customers ලා මොන වගේ ගුණාංග පිළිట్లా තියෙන මිනිස්සුන්ද. වෙරිම බේසික් දෙයක් මම කියන්නම්. මේ app එක මෙයා close කරන්නේ phone එකේ back button එකෙන්ද app එක back button එකෙන්ද? ඒක හිටම් මිනිස්සුන් බලන බැංකුව වල තියෙනවා. Every data point is important. app එක close කරන විදිහ කොහොමද? session එක time out වෙලා app එක. මේක ඔයගලන්ට ගොඩාක් ඕන වෙයි. fintech එක නෙමෙයි. ඕන app එකක් හදනකොට මේක ඔයගලන්ට ගොඩාක් important දේවල්. හරිද? මොකද මේවා මහ ලොකුවට Power BI tableau එකෙන් visualize කරන්න මොකද මුලින්ම data එක ගෙද කරලා තියෙන්න එපා. කොහොමද data ගෙද කරන්නේ? data එක back end එකෙන් ගහන්න එපා database tables වලට. so මේකේ හැම වෙලාවම what is more important? the CRUD operation නේ. database එකට ගහන එක ඕක බලන එක පස්සේ බලන්න මුලින්ම ගහන්න එපා. so ගහනවා කියලා කියන්නේ ඔයා පුළුවන් තරමට ওই mobile එකෙන් දුවන app එකෙන් ගන්න details ටික, ওই web එක දුවන details ටික, ওই ATM එක පවත්වාගෙන details, ওই details ටික, ওই data අපි කියන්නේ data is the new oil කියලා එයි. ওই data තිබ්බොත් තමයි ඕන සෙල්ලම දාත හැකි අපිට. මට බලා ගන්න ඕනේ නම් මේ transactions කරන මිනිස්සුන්ගේ income කොහොමද? ඒගොල්ලන් කරන රැකියාව මොනවාද? ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ education මට්ටම කොහොමද? ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ වර්ගකරණය කරුවොත් age wise කොහොමද? මේකෙන් තමයි මට ගොඩාක් තේරෙන්නේ මගේ customers ලා කවුද? මොන වගේ මිනිස්සුන්ද කියලා. ඊට පස්සේ අපි analytics perspective මේ fintech වල අපි behavioral analysis කරනවා. හරිද? කොහොමද මේක fail වෙන්නේ? මොනවා හේතුවක් උදෙසාද? හරිද? slicing, dicing, drill down ඒවට වඩා දේවල් තියෙනවා හිතන්න. හරි? transactions වැඩිපුර ලංකාවේ කරන district එක මොකද? මම ඔයගලන්ට මේක පෙන්නන හේතුව තමයි fintech කියලා කියන එක it's not easy to dive deep. just an hour or an hour off. හරිද? ඔයගලන් ගොඩාක් data analytics ඒවල් කරනකොට ඔයගලන් බෙඩක් පාවිච්චි කරන ඕන applications you have to think that this is what banks do. This is how they understand y'all. හරිද? customer ගේ life cycle එකේ ඊටම බලනවා ගොඩාක් වැඩිපුර active customers ලා කවුද inactive කවුද account holders wise කවුද වැඩිපුර transacting කරන මිනිස්සු මොන දවසෙන්ද මේගොල්ලෝ වැඩිපුර කරන්නේ හරිද ඔයගලන්ට මම live එකක් පෙන්නන්න හරිද live එකක් still you guys can see my screen
yes sir there's a request.
Sorry, yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, there's a request to speak in English. I think some people can't understand.
Okay, right. So now this is one example of a bank, which is a development bank. You know, one of the important things that they do is very crazy, but something that they do. They even understand people based on what is your mobile device type that you use. Can you think about that? For example, whether this person uses Apple, how many of these people uses Oppo, how many of these people uses Vivo? Why? When you use a mobile app, you can virtually get all the phone brand, model, make, version, everything, right? So these are the power of what data can do for you. So this is, by the way, real time. This is Power BI, where a bank uses this. Real time, they use this to understand, okay, how many transactions that they have done and all of that. So they even go into a level of understanding, you know, what are the bill categories, bill payments that they do, and at which point in time that transactions go the highest, whether it is in the evening hours or morning, likewise. So for you all to visualize all of this, unless and otherwise you have data, you will not be able to do any of those. Now, beyond the data that you have, there will be a lot of other Crashlytics, all these App Store provided analytics service as well. Google also provides analytics. So there There'll be a lot of understanding about the number of installations, the number of active users by day, how many number of sessions are undertaken on a daily basis. So on a daily basis, likewise. So analytics is one important bit of how you really gauge and conclude how success your digital initiative is, right? Even when applications crash, what is the reason of crash? What is the user-wise use ratio? What location-wise crashes? So these are what people really find value in, right? So now features, and now people who are quite interesting about AI. There are a lot of predictions of now. All what you all see here is descriptive analytics, right? You have data. All what you do is visualize those data. But for you to probably predict what will happen down the line, which can be quite accurate or can be somewhat closer to accurate representation, you can do a lot of predictive modeling. So we do a lot of predictive modeling, okay, for us to do this promotion, how success that we will probably be expecting, right? So we use a lot of GPT models are also in place likewise. So this, just like the front end level analytics that you all saw, there are instances where think for yourself now, you all use BApp or SmartPay or Genie or anything. If you get widgets like this, how easy it is for you all as customers. Now what you all saw here is what banks or the admin staff or the backend team will be using. But what if you all use something like this visual illustrations for you to understand your balances by day? So don't think that analytics is only on the back end. Analytics can come in handy at the front end as well, right? For you to understand, okay, on a daily basis, how your debit and credit goes, how your spending types are generally structured, right? How your FDs are going to mature. In terms of credit cards, where do you spend the most? How is your credit card balances have over time have progressed? In terms of pawning, how things generally go about, how do your outstanding amounts by dates, likewise. Leasing is different. Likewise, more than data or more than general text illustrations, now people prefer graphs, various different illustrations or pictograms that can make a big difference, isn't it? So this is the most easiest flavor of fintech, right, in terms of investments or PFM and all of that. Now you might have used Coco Mint Pay. That's another version of fintech, which we call as buy now pay later, study now pay later, reserve now pay later. So this is what simply you make the payment in installments down the line, whether you're buying or purchasing or studying, everything fundamentally you're making a damn payment to somebody. That's what BNPL is all about. Sometimes you can probably today visit Singapore and you might want to pay the ticket in installments. So that's what exactly people have gone into. So fintech has crazy lot of things, how things work, even how you can involve WhatsApp as a means to bank, right? So WhatsApp can also be used as a channel for fintech. So now there are a lot of people, just like fintech, they also bring in gamification elements, right, where you can bring your modeling skills, whether it is to do with AR, VR, or probably 3D Max Maya, likewise things to do with metaverse. So there's a lot, right? This space is quite big. Imagine today everybody speaks about chatbots and everything. So what if I generally say, okay, I don't have the time to operate an app, so I just simply type what is my current account balance, right? So the application says your current balance is this. How does this formulate? Using the GPT models, the way how it is phrasing comes from GPT. The real data comes from the bank backend. Show my recent transactions. Certainly, here are the details of your recent transactions is derived from ChatGPT. The real transaction details from the internal systems. So you can even go into level of combining the essence of two different worlds together to build a fintech experience. So what are the current interest rates for savings accounts? So you can also point at certain websites or certain URLs to bring and harness data as a spider and then populate it. So these are things that you would probably find in that particular bank's website. So you don't need ChatGPT, but how do you phrase that everything ChatGPT? So there's multiple Pine vector models and everything that we use for all of this purpose. So that's the most easiest bit of fintech. I'm going to show you something else. Can you see a screen? Can somebody say what you all can see on screen now? Guys, anybody?
So it's about next generation digital
Right,
banking.
okay. So this is an AI chatbot, right? I'm going to type something, just a conversational part of it. So this also converses with me. And this is, by the way, Singlish. So see the amount, let's say I just type a very big amount. So this is an intelligent chatbot. It seems that the deposit amount you provided is quite high. Could you please confirm a deposit amount that meets this requirement? By the way, this also recognizes voice as well. So this is one bit of it in terms of how you bring some immersive technologies to bridge the gap. So you can just, confuse it. You can play around with that. Right. So likewise, it also understands voice. Now, for example, what are the best rates available for youngsters, youth, millennials? Right. So this is that voice and conversational bit of it. It takes time because on the local servers, so it gives you in voice as well. So right. So this is by far the most layman sense of fintech that I wanted to really show you all, in terms of the UI UX, the mobile bit of it, and all of that. Right. Do we have another 15 minutes? I'm going to quickly take you through some solutions that we do on the fintech perspective. Right. So for people who are quite interested, you can stay. The rest, by all means, you can quit. That's the best that I can probably go ahead with. Right. So now imagine today when you use these logos or these applications, you are using our technology. Whether it is for balance inquiries or fund transfers or bill payments or say opening new FDs, loans, leases, all of those. So virtually everybody's expectation is different. So digital banking is one of the most important element of how fintech is portrayed at Epic. Now, you and me have the luxury of technology, right? We are quite conversant on technology. We have smartphones and all of that, yes. But today we have powered, can you guys see the BOC BOC website?
Not yet. I'm still connected. Yeah, you can see that.
Yeah. So now if you take a look at BOC, today without walking into BOC, imagine today you have a sibling of yours who doesn't understand technology, who doesn't have a smartphone. They still go to a bank to get their banking needs fulfilled. Right? What we have done is today you can walk into any of these outlets. Any of these outlets. Now today you might have seen at Cargill's also, food cities, you can transact for Cargill's bank. So today you can go to AIM stores or Akshaya stores or Amar traders. So these are hardware, petrol stations, pharmacies, fuel, furniture stores, thinking they are a bank. And you can deposit money, you can withdraw money. So these are acting as a banking touch point. Even you can go to post offices of this nature and do transactions. This is what we call as agent banking. What you saw initially or what you have been using now is what you call as self-banking, right? You do it at your comfort, but somebody helping you to do it is what we call as agency banking. It's a different way altogether. Now, a lot of you all might have even thought about opening accounts, right? Though it's not directly relevant to financial technology, you can apply AI onto opening accounts. Quickly show you that as well. Some of you all, if you guys want to build your career in terms of AI, deep learning, neural networks, think about it. The whole purpose of opening accounts is to baseline whether this is the right individual who is having the ownership of this. By the time you take a snap of the identification documents, whether it is the front or rear sides of the photo, you validate whether this is the right NIC of Sri Lanka. How do you do it? All the coordinates, the emblem, the placement, the background. If everything is in order, then you do the OCR. So there can be a lot of AI technologies, ML technologies behind this. Imagine a driving license, quick driving license, right? So firstly, you do all the image bounding indexes, image classification indexes, because by the time the customer selects this, the customer might not say whether it is a driving license or a passport. The application should be intelligent to understand it's a driving license, and then it should read all of those details that is quite seemingly fit enough to be read. Think about the passport. All of us have the same passport, right? So by the time you train the model to understand that this is a passport, then you'll be able to fetch those details. Just like understanding all of these, you have a lot of bot farms, a lot of pre-programmed applications. So how do I know that there is a real customer in the first place who is trying to do it? So you show random gestures, turn right, turn left, smile, tilt down, tilt up. So the application has to do that AI level screening to get all those stream of images for every millisecond and compare whether there was really a movement of that nature. That's what we call as liveness detection, right? So now today we have done a lot of applications, and whenever you do AI, there's a lot of crazy things that you have to do. What are the limitations of this AI model, how things work, and a lot of different things. If there's anybody curious to understand this, after this session is over, you can just stay back. I'll probably be able to just shed some light on that as well if the need be, right? So sometimes you can even train models to understand certain other documents, not the identification documents. Imagine today, I would want to compare the individual who is on this NIC. Just think, for some reason, this might have been taken 10 years back, right? A decade back. And now this fellow is taking a selfie of his current image. So you have to compare to what extent does this image matches with that. Because in account opening, right? Because if that person comes to the bank, you'll be able to directly see. So you compare a lot of images, image processing, image comparisons. You use a lot of various different libraries and technologies out there for comparisons and everything. A lot of different things on the financial technology now you might have understood, I guess, right? Even when you would want to, let's say, open accounts, or rather even go into levels of uploading all of those details and then taking images, smile, because you are trying to open accounts. So the bank is trying to onboard you onto their ecosystem. What if you are trying to play with them? The bank's reputation is at stake. So financial technology doesn't necessarily need to be just about transactions. It can even be optimizing processes, bringing some efficiency into a process that you've been doing at a branch level, so people can do at their fingertips. All what you generally see is just a mandate, right? You just simply send the request, but there is again a crazy workload what banks do to screen this. You might send this request, what they see, how they validate you, how they authenticate you. They see all of your details, they validate these, they reject these, they approve these. Not something simple. If you guys have friends or anybody who is even operations, they are working with the technology that we build, but they know the banking bit of it, but they don't have any idea on the technology. But there's crazy bit of technology for this to open accounts. Massive. right? So that's another technology for you all. Now you might have done a lot of transactions from one bank to another, right? When you go to ATMs today, if you have Sampath Bank card, will you only walk to a Sampath Bank ATM? Now virtually you can go to any Sri Lankan bank ATM and withdraw money. You might have seen a logo called Lanka Pay, right? So that is another way of how you perceive fintech, how you integrate and interconnect two banks together. So this bank has to have that fintech engine, this bank has to have another fintech engine, both will get connected to each other. A lot of you all might have credit cards, debit cards. So there is a big process behind issuing these cards, right? Quickly show you that as well. I might go a bit faster because I don't have the time factor. You whenever you want to get a card, all what you see is the bank gives you a pile of documents, right, to fill all of those details, and then there is a major heavy lifting that they do. From the details that you feed, they will have to enter data, and then this process goes to checking, verification, and then they will score your credit. They will understand how much that they are supposed to give you, the credit limits, lot of process. And you might call, now you might have to get the plastic card, right? How your numbers are being generated, how your pins are being generated, how you get the pin mailers. So these are all thanks to the technology behind fintech, right? Now you call the call center to block your card, activate your card, get your limits. So the call centers will also use a technology of this nature, right? Whether it is debit or credit, everything is the same. At a branch level today, you go and get a debit card, right? So how they generate bulk cards, how they quickly give you cards, all of that is again because of the technology that's behind this. And by the way, whenever you use these cards, it is not going to be only within the Sri Lankan border. You go there and virtually use anywhere, Singapore, India, US, Malaysia, anywhere. So this solution that you do for this bank has to be in a position cooperative in a standardized flavor to talk to somebody else's bank. So it's again a very mission critical approach that you take. You might have seen a lot of the banks, they close operations, and you see people working. For people coming from commerce background, you might know that there is something called suspense accounts. So reconciling is important. Have you all seen situations, for example, when you go to Cargill's or Keel's, the cashier says, "Sir, madam, transaction got declined. Can I go again, swipe it again?" You say, "Yes, go ahead." Only when you get the statement, you realize your transaction has been debited twice. Or probably, let's say you go to an ATM, insert your card onto the ATM. All what you find is the sound from the cash tray, cassette, but you don't get cash. Probably the ATM machine is not serviced. So there is some system which will say transaction got successful, some will say not successful, some will say partially successful. So it's important to do reconciliation, matching multiple different systems to see where discrepancies are, to see where mismatches are. That's reconciliation. Today at all merchant outlets, you might see a lot of terminals, right? What is a terminal? Quick for your understanding, you might have seen terminals like this. Right, so these are terminals. These are terminals. These are terminals, right? So at Epic, this is basically Epic, right? We import the largest number of terminals to the country. We program this using C, C++ technology because it's an embedded programming. And for smart devices, we program through Android. And then how these terminals are being given to Cargill's Keys, it's a big process. So there is a big technology powerhouse. Before you get the stock from the customs, how you classify that this particular terminal was brought for this bank, and how you courier this particular terminal, how you personalize this terminal. I know I'm scaring you guys a bit, or rather I'm just bombarding you with too much of information, but my intention is just to give you all a perspective that fintech is vast, right? And by the time the terminal goes to a merchant thinks, okay, thunder, lightning, or anything, they are calling the bank, but they're not calling the bank. They're calling people like Epic to lodge a dispute or a complaint that the terminal is not working. So there's crazy bit of it. So the merchant, how you manage the relationship with the merchant, like Cargill skills, call center systems, everything has to work in tandem with each other to cater for all of that. So that's another bit of it. So now people who are quite relatively more to do with security, right? Things like encryption, hashing, triple des, AES, duckput, lot of algorithms, right? So you might have seen Cargill skills, they have the terminal, right? What is the assurance that you have when you hand over your card to that cashier? What if the terminal exploits your card and probably plays around with you? So there we have a lot of security technology to eradicate all the frauds that people can play around with terminals. It's a space which has got to do with security, right? Encryptions, algorithms, and all of that. Whenever you do online transactions as merchants today, you can build your own experience, right? You can do Joomla, Magento, Shopify, WordPress, and then you go and integrate with the bank's payment gateway to accept payments. So what is the technology? That is fintech. You might not see, you might just understand the bank, you are integrating with the bank, but what does the bank have? That's the fintech engine to accept payments, right? And whenever you do online transactions, people will have to validate yourself using OTPs, right? So how does the bank know that this person is the one who is the real owner of the card once you enter the OTP? So how do people like Daraz, Alibaba, e-channeling get to know your mobile number? That is through the bank. So that is again a fintech technology. You today settle a lot of bills, whether it is CEB, LECO, water board. That is again thanks to the fintech technology. So likewise, there's a lot of fintech technology, right? Even just think for yourself, an ATM. I hope the screen is still visible to you guys. Today, think about it. A bank, individual, and employee, they'll, unless they see this, something of this nature, they can simply close an ATM, on an ATM, switch off an ATM, all of that simply through this. How? They'll be able to understand in simple essence how this ATM works. Now in Sri Lankan context, if you may have seen, in Jaffna probably they show advertisements in Tamil, in Colombo in Sinhalese, in a different, let's say Colombo 7 in English, all profiling of ATMs, how you switch off an ATM, how you inject all the screens onto an ATM, everything is through fintech. How you as of now manage and understand, okay, where is the ATM up and running, whether the ATM is low on cash. You might have seen people quickly coming and loading cash onto the ATM, right? All that again is basically part and parcel of how things work in relation to the fintech bit of it. Right, so sharp 8:32. That's where I wanted to. Any questions on you guys' part? I mean, like, if the need be, if you guys are still willing to stay back, I can show on those aspects of people who are relatively quite exhausted, burdened, can probably quit. Any questions? Anything that you guys feel that probably I can spend another 5 to 10 minutes quick to take you all through that process. Any questions or anything, feel free to even use the chat. In simple essence, fintech is vast. The use cases are ample, from cards, credit debit cards, to ATMs, to POS, point of sale terminals, to even digitize things like recoveries. For example, imagine today you have gotten yourself a lending facility, like a loan or a credit card, but you don't pay on time, right? So if that's the case, how am I going to follow up you and get the cash? That is again part of fintech, right? So that's essentially on the fintech perspective, right? So there's a lot of security as well. I mean, like, because you might probably be aware on the cyber threats that is quite prevalent in terms of banking, especially when you if you guys are, I mean, like, not today, But just think about it, just do your homework reading. There's a lot of different things when you build applications. How you detect emulator detections, debugger detections, how you identify code of obfuscations, right? In terms of obfuscating important elements, and things to do with tamper detection. There might be rooted device also. So how you do that? The tap jacking detection. So there's a lot of things like SSL pinning, USB debugging detection. So don't just think like learning Android or Flutter or React will help you. If you would want to stand out, you got to probably think something beyond. Now imagine if you are somebody who is into Flutter. Let's say you have a clean architecture mindset. You might be using Dart as a language. You might be using Visual Studio Code or Android Studio Xcode as your IDE, right? So, but still, how the state is being managed through Flutter, because these are interview things that people will probably be trying to identify from you. How you manage states, how you use Riverpod, provider, C, or block for state management. How routing happens in Flutter, like Go Router. How dependency injection, like Get It, is being brought in. Whether you have any understanding about CI/CD, like Jenkins. How you manage version control, like GitLab, Bitbucket, or GitHub. Likewise, a lot of the things probably you might be learning over the time when you get into the industry bit of it. But keep in mind, with the era that you are seeing, again, not to scare you all, but life is so simpler now. Everything is at your fingertips. Chat GPT or Gemini or whatever the pilot, co-pilot that you might be referring to, but still for all, stand out either in the form of soft skills, in terms of how you think, in terms of your thought process. If you are a quiet and introvert, don't ever think that personality has got something to do with profession, right? You can still be successful being an introvert, but just try to, I would say, tackle and probably challenge your status quo, challenge your existing way of looking at things, because the opportunities out there is very, very limited, right? So to make use of that, you can't probably be saying, okay, all of us have been from the same, we are products of University of Sri Jayewardenepura, taught by the same panel of lecturers, the same curriculum. So there has to be something that is standing out in terms of y'all. So just like the way how life is easy in terms of understanding or probably getting to know things, keep in mind that you might have to put your heart and soul into doing things to make your life easy. That's essentially on my end. If there's no questions, we can wrap it up.
Yeah, so like there aren't any questions here. Thank you, sir, for that insightful session.
It's my pleasure. Right. So, yeah.
Okay. Quick reminder: if you haven't submit the Google form yet, you have to submit to secure your certificate. So, all right, over to you, Abhira.
Thank you once again, Mr. Naseem, for sharing your knowledge and expertise with us today. We truly appreciate your time and the value you have brought to this session. As a token of our appreciation, we would like to present you with a small certificate of appreciation. Your contribution to techXplore 1.0 means a lot to us.
All right, guys. Thanks. Thank you so much. Means a lot. Appreciate your time as well. So if there's anything further, feel free to post through your organizing committee. I'll be able to again assist on that grounds as well. So thank you. Have a very good day.
Thank you once again for being a part of this session, sir. As we conclude today's session, a huge thank you to Mr. Mohamed Naseem Sadiq for the valuable insight he shared, to all our enthusiastic participants, and to our team who made this event a success. A special thanks to our sponsors for supporting techXplore 1.0. That's it for today. See you at our next session. Have a great night.